The wind howled across the empty highway, pushing snow into deep drifts. Inside his warm truck, John Riggs saw only the white lines disappearing under his tires. His ranch was still 20 miles away. Then, a flash of red in the ditch. A piece of fabric. He slowed, thinking it was trash. But it moved. It was a sleeve. A person curled tight against the cold. He slammed the truck into park. The girl was young, her face pale against her dark hair. Her thin coat was no match for the Montana winter. She wasn't moving. Without a second thought, he scooped her up. She was light as a feather, freezing to the touch. He placed her gently in the passenger seat, blasting the heater. The big ranch house was dark and silent when he carried her inside. He laid her on the couch near the stone fireplace and quickly built a roaring fire. He brought heavy wool blankets from a chest, wrapping her up until only her face was visible. Her skin was like ice. He warmed some milk on the stove, adding a little honey. When he held the cup to her lips, her eyes fluttered open. They were a startling shade of green, full of a fear so deep it made his chest ache. She drank, her hands shaking too much to hold the cup herself. She didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the fire, trembling. He sat in the chair opposite, giving her space. Finally, her voice, rough and quiet, broke the silence. "The truck left me." That was all she said before tears cut clean tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. He didn't press. He just nodded. "You're safe now. That's all that matters tonight." He saw the old, scarred leather backpack she'd clutched like a lifeline. It was soaked through. He placed it near the hearth to dry. As midnight passed into Christmas Day, her shaking finally stopped. Sleep took her. John Riggs didn't sleep. He watched the fire, and he watched the girl. The empty, quiet house he'd come home to felt different. A stranger was on his couch, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone. Christmas morning sunlight streamed into the living room. She was awake, sitting up, watching him as he made coffee. "Good morning," he said, his voice softer than usual. She just nodded, pulling the blankets tighter. He cooked bacon and eggs, the smell filling the room. He set a plate on the small table near her. She ate like she hadn't eaten in days. He learned her name was Kate. She said she was 19. She was careful with her words, like each one cost her something. He asked no questions about where she came from. She offered nothing. After breakfast, she insisted on washing the dishes. He showed her where everything was. She noticed the box in the corner. An artificial Christmas tree, still in its box, bought on a lonely impulse weeks ago. "You didn't set it up," she said. It wasn't a question. He shrugged. Seemed like a lot of trouble for one. She looked at the box, then at the big, bare room. "Can we?" They spent the afternoon assembling the tree. It was slow, quiet work. He found a box of old ornaments in the attic, things from his mother, from a life long gone. They were dusty and fragile. She handled each one with a reverence that surprised him before hanging it with care. By late afternoon, the tree was lit. Its multicolored lights reflected in the window against the white landscape outside. She stood back, looking at it. A small, real smile touched her lips. "It's beautiful," she whispered. He realized he hadn't turned on any of his usual TV noise all day. The quiet with her there was comfortable. He gave her a spare bedroom upstairs. He brought her fresh towels and some of his late sister's old clothes that had been stored away for decades. The flannel shirt and sweatpants were too big, but she hugged them to herself gratefully. "Thank you, John," she said. Hearing his name in her young voice felt strangely important. That night, as he lay in his own bed, he listened to the old house settle. He could hear the faint sound of her moving around in the room above him. He thought about the fear in her eyes and the careful way she smiled at the tree. Someone was in his house. And for now, that was okay. On the second day, she explored. He found her in his study, looking at the framed photos on the wall. Pictures of him years ago, winning rodeo championships. Pictures of land, of cattle, of a younger man standing beside a beautiful woman. Your wife? Kate asked gently. Was, he said. A long time ago. She didn't ask more. She started to help without being asked. She fed the 2 old barn cats that wandered in. She organized the mudroom where boots and coats were scattered. She had a system, a need to keep busy. He was fixing a fence on the south pasture and saw her from a distance, walking the tree line, just looking. She always stayed in sight of the house. He went into town for supplies. The grocery store was busy with post-Christmas sales. He bought more food than usual, including things a young woman might like: fruit, yogurt, a couple of magazines. He felt people looking at him, the wealthy, quiet rancher buying pink yogurt. He didn't care. On his way back, his truck phone rang. It was Sheriff Miller, an old friend. Heard you might have a visitor out at your place, John. The sheriff's voice was casual, but John felt a chill. Where'd you hear that? Marge at the gas station saw a young girl in your passenger seat yesterday. Just checkin'. All okay? John paused. All okay. She's a family friend. Spending the holidays. The sheriff was quiet for a beat. All right then. You have a good New Year. He hung up, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He hadn't thought about people talking. He hadn't thought about anything except helping someone in need. But the sheriff's call was a warning. The world was noticing. When he got home, Kate had hot coffee waiting. She took a bag of groceries from him. I made lunch, she said shyly. It was just soup and sandwiches, but it was set neatly on the table. They ate together. He didn't mention the sheriff's call. That evening, he saw her at the window, staring out at the falling snow. The look on her face wasn't fear this time. It was sadness, deep and heavy. He wanted to ask, but he knew walls when he saw them. You don't rush a scared animal. You wait for it to come to you. A routine developed over the next few days. She would cook breakfast. He would handle the heavy ranch work. In the afternoons, she'd sometimes follow him on simpler tasks, handing him tools, learning to brush down his gentle old horse, Dusty. She was a quick study, quiet and attentive. He found her one afternoon in the ranch office, looking at his computer. She jumped when he entered. I'm sorry, I was just... She was flustered. On the screen was a local news website. It's fine, he said. You can use it. But he saw the specific page. It was the missing persons section. Her face wasn't there. He saddled Dusty and a calm mare named Belle. Come on, he said. The horses need the exercise, and so do we. She was nervous but trusted him. They rode slowly across his land, the snow crunching underfoot. The silence was broken only by the sound of the horses and the wind. From the top of a ridge, you could see for miles his land and beyond. It's so big, she said, awe in her voice. And it's all yours. He nodded. It's a lot of responsibility. It can be lonely. She looked at him, then really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. I know lonely, she said softly. On the ride back, she opened up a little. She talked about books she loved, about how she wanted to see the ocean one day. She didn't mention her past, her family, or how she ended up in his ditch. He shared stories of the ranch, of the mistakes he'd made, of the pride he had in the land. That night, after she went to bed, he sat at the computer. He looked at the missing persons page from across the state. He typed in a description. Young woman, approximately 19, green eyes, dark hair. No matches. He deleted the search history, a knot of worry forming in his gut. Who was she running from? Later, he heard a sound. A soft cry from upstairs. A nightmare. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening. The cry faded into muffled sobs. He took a step up, then stopped. He wasn't her father. He was a stranger. He went back to his chair, feeling helpless, and waited until the house was silent again. New Year's Eve arrived with another heavy snow. They decided to stay in. She found an old movie channel playing classic films. They watched a black and white comedy, and he heard her laugh for the first time. It was a good sound, a sound that warmed the whole room. He made popcorn. She wore the oversized flannel shirt and thick socks. For a few hours, she looked like what she was, a young person, safe and warm, enjoying a movie. He found himself watching her reactions more than the screen. The way she bit her lip during a tense part, the way she smiled at the happy ending. As midnight approached, the movie ended. The TV showed a crowd in Times Square counting down. 10, 9, 8. She hugged a pillow to her chest. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. People on TV cheered and kissed. The room was quiet. Happy New Year, John, she said. Happy New Year, Kate, he replied. The moment stretched. The connection between them was a physical thing in the room, gratitude, companionship, something more fragile and unspoken. He cleared his throat and stood up. I should check the generator. Storm's getting worse. It was an excuse, and they both knew it. He needed air. Outside, the cold was a slap. He wasn't a foolish man. He knew what he was starting to feel was complicated and likely one-sided. She was a kid in trouble. He was providing shelter. That was all it could be. When he came back inside, she was gone from the living room. The lights were off except for the Christmas tree. He found a single, small note on the kitchen counter. It read, "Thank you for the best Christmas. I will never forget it." His heart dropped. She was leaving. He took the stairs two at a time. Her bedroom door was open. The bed was made. The old clothes were folded neatly on the chair. Her worn backpack was gone. He rushed to the window and saw a single set of footprints leading from the back door into the blinding snow, headed toward the main road. He didn't even grab a coat. He ran out the back door, into the storm, following the footprints. The snow was coming down hard, already filling them in. "Kate!" he yelled, the wind stealing his voice. "Kate!" He saw a dark shape about 100 yards out, struggling through a drift. He ran, his boots sinking deep. She heard him and turned, her face a mask of fresh fear and determination. "Leave me alone," she screamed. "I have to go." He caught up to her, grabbing her arm gently but firmly. "You'll die out here. It's a whiteout." She tried to pull away, sobbing. "You don't understand. They'll find me here. They'll hurt you." The words hung between them. "They." "Who?" he demanded, holding her shoulders. "Who will find you?" She shook her head, tears freezing on her cheeks. "My stepfather. He's not a good man. He has friends. They saw your truck. The sheriff called, didn't he? I heard you talking that day. I can't let them come here." Everything clicked into place. The fear, the hiding, the news searches. She wasn't running from the police. She was running from a predator. And she was running to protect him. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her shivering body. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and steady against the howling wind. "This is my land. You are under my roof. No one is going to hurt you, and no one is going to hurt me. Do you understand?" She collapsed against him, all the fight gone, replaced by sheer exhaustion and terror. He lifted her into his arms and carried her back to the house, her face buried in his shoulder. She was so light. Back inside, he sat her by the fire again, just like the first night. He wrapped the blankets around her. He brought her warm tea. This time the story spilled out. A cruel man, A mother who passed away, a life of control and quiet threats. She had run away with a trucker who promised help, but he got spooked and left her on the side of the road miles from anywhere. She showed him what was in the backpack. A few clothes, a picture of her mother, and a folded, official-looking document. It was her mother's will, leaving a small insurance policy to Kate alone. "He wants it," she said flatly. "He knows I have this. He'll never stop." John took the paper. He looked at it, then into the fire. The kind, lonely man was gone. In his place was the tough rancher who had fought for everything he had. "Let him try," John said, his voice like stone. "He's not stepping one foot on my land." For the rest of the night, they made a plan. She would stay. Officially, she was his new hired hand, helping with the books and the house. He would call his lawyer in the morning. They would use the document to legally secure what was hers from a distance. And they would be prepared. The next morning, the storm had passed. The world was buried under 3 feet of pristine snow. John made the calls to his lawyer, a tough woman in Billings, and to Sheriff Miller, this time with a different tone. He reported a potential trespassing threat and mentioned he'd hired on a young relative to help. He was polite, but firm. He was establishing his story. Kate watched him, seeing a side of him she hadn't seen before. A strategic, powerful side. He was drawing a line around his property and around her. For the first time since her mother died, she felt truly protected. Days turned into weeks. Winter held the ranch in its grip. Their routine deepened, but the air had changed. The unspoken thing between them was now acknowledged, though still carefully held at bay. He was in his 50s. She was 19. It was a canyon he would not cross. His care was that of a guardian, and he made sure she knew it. But feelings are not so simple. She saw his strength and his kindness. He saw her resilience and her gentle heart. A touch lingered when handing a tool. A shared look across the dinner table held a universe of understanding. It was a slow, quiet burn, felt deeply by both, named by neither. The danger wasn't gone. One afternoon, a strange truck, sleek and black, moving too fast for the snowy road, slowed as it passed the ranch's main gate. It didn't stop, but it noted the location. John saw it from the barn. He picked up his rifle and cleaned it that evening, something he hadn't done in years. She saw him and didn't flinch. That night, as he locked up, she was standing in the kitchen. "John," she said. He turned. "I don't know what happens next, but thank you for giving me a chance to have a next." He nodded, his throat tight. "You earned it, kid." He went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. He heard the floorboard creak outside his door. A long pause. Then, the soft sound of footsteps walking away. He stared at the ceiling, his heart pounding. The line he was holding was getting harder to see. The final scene of this chapter was the two of them, side by side on the porch at sunset, looking out at his land. Her future was still a mystery, shadowed by threat. His life had been upended by a splash of red in a snowdrift. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. The bond was solid. The winter was long, and they were in it together. The story was far from over. The lawyer from Billings, Carla, arrived in a sturdy 4-wheel drive. She was all business, with a sharp gaze that missed nothing. Over coffee at the kitchen table, she laid out the hard truth. The will was valid, but Kate's stepfather, a man named Roy, had filed a claim against it, saying Kate was unstable and had stolen it. "He's creating a paper trail," Carla said, "making her look like a criminal before he even finds her." Kate's hands shook holding her mug. John placed a steadying hand on the table near hers, not touching, but close. "What do we do?" he asked. Carla laid out a plan. They would file a counterclaim, alleging coercion. But for it to hold, Kate would need to sign an affidavit. A formal, legal document stating everything Roy had done. "It means telling your story, honey," Carla said, not unkindly. Every hard part. After Carla left, with promises to send the papers, a heavy silence fell. The reality of the fight was now a stack of forms on the table. Kate looked at John, her green eyes wide. "What if he wins?" she asked. John didn't hesitate. "Then you still have a home here. As my hired hand." That's a legal fact now, too. Preparations began in earnest. John showed Kate the ranch's safe room, a reinforced storage room in the basement originally built for tornadoes. He showed her how to lock it from the inside. He gave her a simple, charged cell phone to keep on her at all times, with only his number and Carla's programmed in. He also introduced her to Duke, his aging but loyal border collie. "Duke's job is to notice everything," John explained. The dog took to Kate immediately, following her from room to room, sleeping outside her bedroom door. It was a small comfort, but she smiled when Duke rested his head on her foot. One evening, John taught her to drive his old manual transmission farm truck in the snowy back pasture. She was nervous, grinding gears, but she learned. "If something happens and I'm not here, you get to this truck. You drive to the sheriff's office. Don't stop for anyone," he instructed. She nodded, gripping the steering wheel tightly, feeling both scared and empowered. Their days took on a dual purpose. Ranch chores continued, but every task was also about awareness. Checking gate latches, noting unfamiliar tire tracks on the distant road, keeping the rifles clean and secured but accessible. Kate was no longer just a guest. She was part of the ranch's defense. The emotional space between them became a tangible thing. Watching a movie, they sat on opposite ends of the couch, but Duke would lie between them, a warm, breathing barrier. Sometimes, handing her a cup of coffee, his fingers would brush hers. The air would catch for a second. Neither would mention it. He found her one afternoon in his study, looking at a map of the ranch. "Memorizing it?" he asked. She pointed to a far corner. "If someone came from the east, they'd have to cross this creek. It's steep. It would slow them down." He was impressed. She wasn't just hiding. She was thinking like a strategist. "Good," he said. "Real good." The affidavit arrived. For 2 days, Kate hid in her room with the papers and a pen. John heard her crying through the door. He wanted to knock, to comfort her, but he knew this was a battle she had to fight alone. She was putting her trauma into words, and it was tearing her apart. She emerged on the third morning, eyes red-rimmed but clear. The papers were filled out in her neat handwriting. She handed them to John without a word. He didn't read them. He just put them in the express mail envelope Carla had provided. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice rough. That simple phrase made her chin quiver. She just nodded and went to wash her face with cold water. The act of mailing it changed something. A weight had been shifted, if not lifted. That night, she made a special dinner, a pot roast with vegetables, a recipe she said was her mother's. They ate by candlelight, the Christmas tree lights still twinkling in the corner. It felt like a celebration or a promise. After dinner, she didn't retreat upstairs. She sat with him by the fire. They talked about ordinary things, the price of feed, a book she was reading, an old movie star he remembered. It was the most normal conversation they'd ever had. For a few hours, they pretended there was no threat, no legal battle, no painful past. When she finally rose to go to bed, she stopped at the foot of the stairs. "John." He looked up from his chair. "Thank you," she said, "for not asking to read it." He held her gaze. "Your story is yours to tell. When and if you want to." She gave him a small, genuine smile that reached her eyes, then disappeared upstairs. He sat for a long time after. The fire crackled. Duke sighed in his sleep. John Riggs realized the quiet ache he'd carried in his chest for years, the one he'd mistaken for loneliness, was gone. It had been replaced by a fierce, terrifying need to protect this young woman. And something else, a feeling he dared not name. The first test came. A county vehicle, not the sheriff's, pulled up to the main gate. A man in a suit got out, fiddling with the lock. John and Kate watched from the barn. "Stay here," John said, his voice low. He walked out, Duke at his heel. The man was a process server. He had papers for a Catherine Miller requiring her appearance in court. "She's not here," John stated calmly, blocking the man's path to the house. "This is private property. You're at the gate. That's as far as you come without a sheriff's deputy present." The man argued, but John stood like a mountain, his weathered face unyielding. The man finally slid the papers through the gate bars onto the ground and left in a huff. John picked up the papers, his jaw tight. He walked back to the barn. Kate was pale. "He found me." "He found my address," John corrected. "That's all. He didn't see you. He didn't get near you." He tore the papers in half, then into quarters. "Let Roy waste his money sending more. They won't reach you." But the peace was shattered. The outside world had shoved its way in. That night, every creak of the house made her jump. John moved his chair to sit in the hallway at the top of the stairs, within earshot of her room. He didn't tell her he was there. He just sat, a silent sentinel, until he heard her breathing settle into the slow rhythm of sleep. Carla called with an update. Roy's legal move was predictable, but the court date he'd secured was alarmingly soon. "He's got a friendly judge in his hometown," Carla said. "We need a file for a change of venue, but that takes time. The hearing is in 3 weeks." 3 weeks. The number hung in the air. Kate listened, her face a mask of dread. "Do I have to go?" she asked, her voice small. Carla was honest. "If we want to win, and make him go away for good?" "Yes. You have to face him. In a room full of people with the law on your side." After the call, Kate retreated to the porch, despite the cold. John followed, handing her a coat. She stared at the endless white. "I'm not strong enough," she whispered. "To see him, I'll fall apart." John turned her to face him, his hands firm on her shoulders. "Listen to me. You survived him. You escaped him. You stood in a blizzard to protect a stranger. You are the strongest person I know." Tears spilled over. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his chest, sobbing. He held her, one hand cradling the back of her head. It was the first real embrace they had shared. He felt her fragility and her immense strength all at once. He held her until the shudders passed. "That man," John said quietly, still holding her. "He thinks he has power over you. But his power is a lie. It's just fear. And you're learning how to stop being afraid." She looked up at him, her face blotchy, her green eyes searching his. In that moment, the canyon between their ages and experiences seemed to vanish. They were just two people against the world. He stepped back, breaking the contact before the moment could spiral into territory neither was ready for. "We'll go together," he stated. "You, me, and Carla. We'll walk into that courtroom, and we'll end this." She wiped her face, nodding, a new resolve hardening in her expression. Training shifted. It was no longer just about hiding. It was about confronting. John role-played with her, acting as Roy, asking the cruel, manipulative questions she feared. At first, she froze. Then she stuttered. Then, with his calm encouragement, she began to find her voice. "That's not true," she would say. "I have the document. I have the truth." She also learned practical things. How to stand, how to project her voice, how to make eye contact with an ally in a crowd, him. They practiced in the living room, him in his chair playing the judge, her standing tall by the fireplace. "For the record," she said, her voice gaining strength, "my name is Catherine Miller, and I am here of my own free will." The physical closeness of their new routine was a constant undercurrent. Brushing past each other in the kitchen, their hands meeting over a tool, standing side by side looking at legal documents. The air hummed with unsaid things. One afternoon, her hand lingered on his arm after handing him a wrench. They both froze. The world narrowed to that point of contact. He slowly placed his hand over hers, a silent acknowledgement, before letting go and returning to work. No words were needed. Carla sent our investigators' report. Roy had debts. The insurance money wasn't just greed. It was a lifeline for him. "A cornered animal is more dangerous," John noted grimly. They increased patrols. John enlisted 2 of his most trusted ranch hands, men who'd been with him for 20 years, to keep a casual but watchful eye on the perimeter. The ranch became a softly guarded fortress. A week before the hearing, a blizzard was forecasted to be the worst of the season. They spent a day battening down the hatches, securing animals, checking generators. It was all hands work, and Kate was in the thick of it, hauling hay, checking water heaters. She was no longer the girl in the ditch. She was a capable part of the ranch. That night, the storm hit with fury. The power flickered and died. The generator kicked on, running only essential lights and the furnace. The world shrank to the circle of light from the fireplace and oil lamps. The wind screamed like a living thing against the windows. With the TV and distractions gone, they were left with only each other. They played cards. She told him more about her mother, her laugh, her love of gardenias, how she'd hidden books for Kate to read. He told her about his wife, Ellen, how she died too young in a car accident, how the ranch had become his tomb and his sanctuary. It was the deepest conversation they'd ever had. The barriers of guardian and ward, of age and circumstance, melted away in the dark, stormy room. They were just John and Kate, 2 wounded souls who had found a harbor in the same storm. As the night wore on, she fell asleep on the couch. He covered her with a blanket. He sat in his chair, watching her sleep in the firelight. The feeling he dared not name rose up in his chest, so powerful it stole his breath. It wasn't just protection. It wasn't just care. It was a profound, devastating love. He knew it could never be spoken, but it was true. He must have dozed off. He was jolted awake by Duke's low, serious growl. Not a bark. A warning rumble from the depths of his chest. John was on his feet instantly. Kate woke, her eyes wide with alarm. Outside the howl of the wind, they heard a new sound. The crunch of a vehicle moving slowly, without headlights, coming up the buried driveway. John moved quickly. He pointed to the basement door. Safe room.
Now. Phone.
Go. She didn't argue. She grabbed the phone and Duke's collar, disappearing into the darkness of the basement stairs. John heard the soft click of the lock engaging. He picked up his rifle, not chambering a round yet, and moved to the side window. A dark pickup truck was idling near the front porch, its outline blurred by the blowing snow. One man got out, hunched against the weather. It wasn't Roy. It was someone bigger, younger. A hired hand. The man pounded on the front door. "Hello. My truck's stuck. I need help." The voice was loud, false. John didn't answer. He watched. The man tried the door handle. It was locked. He moved to peer into the living room window, cupping his hands against the glass, right where John and Kate had been sitting minutes before. John made a decision. He chambered around. The solid ka-chunk was audible in the silent house. He then flicked on the powerful porch light, flooding the man in blinding brightness. John spoke, his voice booming through the door, calm and deadly clear. "You are trespassing on private property. The sheriff is on his way. You have 10 seconds to get back in your truck and drive out the way you came before I consider you a direct threat to my home." The man froze, caught like a deer. He squinted, trying to see inside. He saw the barrel of the rifle reflected in the window glass. He raised his hands. "All right, mister. No problem. Just needed help." He backed away clumsily, scrambled into his truck, and executed a hasty, sliding turn back down the driveway, his taillights disappearing into the white chaos. John didn't move for 5 full minutes, watching. He then went to the basement door.
Kate.
"It's me." "He's gone." He heard the lock turn. She emerged, Duke beside her, her face pale but composed. She was still holding the phone, her finger hovering over the call button for the sheriff. "He was scouting," John said, his voice tight. "Seeing if you were here, testing the defenses." The storm had provided the perfect cover. The hearing was in a week. Roy was getting desperate. Kate looked at the rifle in his hand, then into his eyes. The fear was there, but it was secondary now. A cold anger had taken its place. "He knows I'm here," she said. It wasn't a question. John nodded.
"Yeah."
"He knows. But he also knows now that getting to you means going through me." The statement hung between them, a vow more binding than any legal document. The rest of the night was spent on watch, taking shifts. They didn't sleep. They sat together in the dark, listening to the storm rage. The battle lines were no longer on paper. They were drawn in the snow at the edge of the porch. The final confrontation was no longer a courtroom abstract. It was coming, and it was coming soon.